They say never really appreciate something until it's gone. And honestly, I think that's exactly what's happening right now in the car world. Because for almost 20 years ago, there was this one engine that sat above everything else. And the crazy part is, it wasn't electric or hybrid. There was no complicated software magic behind it. It was just an engine, a 8-liter quad-turbo W16 monster. See, back then, the Volkswagen Group didn't build this engine because it made sense financially. No. They built it to prove a point that they could create something the rest of the world thought was impossible. And to do that, they spent billions developing it. They reportedly lost millions on almost every single car they sold it with, which makes this story even crazier, because after all these years, the king of engines is taking his final bow. In the machine carrying that goodbye is the Bugatti W16 Mistral. Named after the cold wind that swept through southern France. A wind known for bringing change. And for Bugatti, that's exactly what this car represents. Because the Mistral isn't just another hypercar, it's the final road legal Bugatti ever built with the legendary W16 engine. The very last one. After this, there are no more. And instead of quietly retiring the engine that changed automotive world forever, Bugatti decided to give it one final, completely insane send-off. So what did they do? They removed the roof. And honestly, at first, it sounds completely insane. Because usually when a company builds the final version of something this important, they play it safe. They make it more comfortable, more refined, more elegant. But Bugatti didn't want that. They wanted people to feel this engine one last time. Not through speakers or fake sound generators. No, they wanted you to hear the turbos inhaling right behind your ear. Wow. To feel the wind ripping through the cabin at nearly 300 miles per hour. To experience the W16 with absolutely nothing separating you from it. And that's what makes this Bugatti W16 Mistral so special. It feels more like a farewell concert to one of the greatest engines ever made. But to really understand why the Mistral matters so much, you have to go back where it all started, back in 2005. Because that's when the world first saw the Bugatti Veyron 16.4. Back then, this car didn't even feel real. I mean, seriously think about what Bugatti was trying to do. Over 1,000 horsepower, 4 turbochargers, 10 radiators, an engine so massive that it was basically 2 V8 engines fused together into one mechanical monster. On paper, it sounded impossible, and honestly, a lot of people believe it was. Even engineers from other companies told Bugatti he had completely lost his mind. But then the Veyron actually came out, and suddenly the entire industry changed. Because before the Veyron, 250 miles per hour sounded like a fantasy. After the Veyron, that became the target. Then came the Bugatti Chiron. With more power, more speed, more madness. The W16 engine evolved from 1,000 horsepower to 1,500 and eventually to 1,600 horsepower in the Bugatti Chiron Super Sport 300+. And that same engine, the one that spent almost 2 decades terrifying the laws of physics, ended up here, inside the Mistral. But this is where the story gets interesting. Because the Bugatti Chiron was never designed to be convertible. At normal speeds maybe, that wouldn't have mattered much. But at 250, 260 and nearly 300 miles per hour, it matters a lot. To remove the roof from a car like this, a lot could go wrong. Like the chassis can flex, the car can twist, or maybe the airflow becomes unstable. So Bugatti couldn't just cut off the roof and call it a day. So they had to redesign huge parts of the car from ground up. Things like the structure, aerodynamics, cooling systems, everything had to be reworked just so that this thing could survive the speed it was built to reach. And somehow, after all that engineering madness, they still made it more beautiful than the Chiron. Now here's the thing about Bugatti. They never really built cars the same way other companies do. Because yes, they make some of the fastest machines on earth, but at the same time, they treat them like rolling pieces of art. And honestly, the Mistral might be one of the purest examples of that philosophy. The moment you step inside, everything changes. It doesn't feel mass-produced or a machine-made. It feels handcrafted, like every surface was touched by an actual person before the car left the factory. The leather alone takes hundreds of hours to finish. And for the first time ever, Bugatti is introducing moving leather inside the cabin, which sounds like a small detail until you actually see it. Then you realize this company is obsessed with craftsmanship in a way most brands simply aren't anymore. But then you notice something tiny, something most people would never see. The gear shifter, and trapped inside is a small golden elephant. Now at first, that sounds random, but it isn't. It's actually the dancing elephant, a sculpture originally designed by Rembrandt Bugatti, the brother of Ettore Bugatti. And nearly a century ago, that same sculpture appeared on the legendary Bugatti Type 41 Royal. So without people even realizing it, Bugatti connected its past from its future inside the very last W16 car it will ever build. And honestly, that's kind of beautiful, because the wildest part of this design sits right behind the seats, those massive air scoops. At first glance, they just look aggressive, like they are there for styling, but they are not. Those intakes, they are feeding huge amounts of air directly into the W16 engine, because the seat just inches behind your head. Every turbo inhale, whistle or hiss happens right next to your ears. No artificial sound, no fake speakers pumping noise into the cabin, just raw mechanical violence. And that feeling is becoming rare now, because modern cars are becoming quieter, cleaner, and more digital, but the Mistral still feels alive. But then something happened that shocked almost everyone in the car world. A huge change. Because suddenly, Bugatti, the company famous for building some of the wildest combustion engines ever, was now being led by a man known for electric cars. Rimac, the founder of Rimac Automotive. And when that merger happened, a lot of people immediately assumed the same thing, that the moment Rimac took over, the legendary W16 would disappear overnight. And only that assumption made sense, because the entire industry was already moving towards electrification. Quieter cars, more software, less emotion. But surprisingly, Rimac understands something really important, that Bugatti was never about numbers or speed, but emotion and mechanical insanity. And he knew that an engine this legendary didn't deserve to quietly disappear. It deserved a proper goodbye. And that's why the Bugatti W16 Mistral exists. This car is basically a farewell letter to the combustion era. A bridge between the old world and the future. Because whether people like it or not, the industry is changing. Electric motors, hybrid systems, software-controlled performance. That's where everything is heading now. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with progress. But cars like the Mistral remind people of something important. That performance used to feel raw, unpredictable and violent. And that you did not just drive these machines, but you experienced them. Soon the final Bugatti W16 Mistral will leave the factory in more shame. And when that happens, that's it. No more W16 engines ever again. And honestly, when you really stop and think about it, that feels strange. Because cars like this were never supposed to exist in the first place. They were too expensive, too complicated, too excessive. The kind of machines that made absolutely no sense, but maybe that's exactly why people fell in love with them. Because they represent something bigger than transportation. They represent ambition without limits. And yes, Bugatti already showed us the future with the Bugatti Tourbillon. A completely new chapter, more advanced, more intelligent, faster in almost every measurable way. But the Mistral still feels different because this car is introducing a new era, but it's closing one. It's a final roar to a generation that chases speed with bigger engines, louder turbos, mechanical madness, instead of batteries and software updates. And maybe we will never see something like this again because the world is changing, regulations are changing, and giant combustion engines are slowly disappearing. But legends will never live quietly. And maybe one day, somewhere in the mountains of southern France, you will hear something in the distance. A sound so violent that it barely feels like a car anymore, more like a fighter jet tearing through air. And if that happens, that's just the Mistral. A reminder of time when cars were loud, unreasonable, and completely obsessed with braking limits. A time when engineers built machines not because they had to, but because they wanted to see how far madness could go.